Hello class, we are in page 283 in our arithmetic books. Today we're going to learn how to round off mixed numbers. So we did learn how to round whole numbers, we learned how to round decimals, and now we're rounding mixed numbers, which are fractions. So we are in page 283 in our arithmetic books. So there is a fact that we have to know. Let's go and read that fact together first. So it says, fact, to round a mixed number to a whole number, drop the fraction if it is less than 1/2. If the fraction is 1/2 or greater, drop the fraction and add 1 to the whole number. So it's like the same exact concept when we were rounding decimals or when we were rounding whole numbers. So it says drop the fraction if it is less than 1/2. If it is 1/2 or greater, drop the fraction and add 1 to the whole number. But there is also a rule that we have to know. How do we know if the fraction is less than 1/2 or more than 1/2? So the rule says, if the numerator is more than 1/2 of the denominator, the fraction is greater than 1/2. Let's going to read that rule again. If the numerator is more than 1/2 of the denominator, the fraction is greater than 1/2. Now let me go ahead and show you an example because some of you are going to be confused just by reading that rule. So my first example is 3 and 5/6. So I have a mixed number. I have 3, 5/6. My first step is going to be looking at my denominator. What is my denominator? My denominator is 6. But what is half of 6? Half of 6 is 3. So we're looking at this number and comparing our 3 to our numerator. If our numerator is greater than 3, that means our fraction is greater than 1/2. If our numerator is less than 3, that means it's less than 1/2. Let's look at our fraction though. Is our numerator 5 greater than 3? Yes. That means 5/6 is greater than 1/2. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop that fraction and I'm going to add 1 to my whole number. So my final answer is going to be 4. Let me go ahead and move on to my next example. My next example is 9 and 1/5. 9 and 1/5. Remember, our first step is look at your denominator. My denominator is 5. What is half of 5? Some of you are going to be, I don't know what is half of 5. What you can do is divide that 5 by 2. Let's go and divide. 2 divided by 5 equals 2. We have 4, remainder 1. We did learn how to finish our division without a remainder. So I'm going to add my decimal point and add a 0. How many times can 2 go into 10? That will be 5 times. 2 times 5 equals 10, and I have no remainder. The half of 5 is what? 2.5. Now let's look at that answer, 2.5, and compare our answer to our numerator. My numerator is 1, and my answer was 2.5. Which one is smaller? Our 1 is smaller. That means 1/5 is less than 1/2. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to drop that fraction and my final answer is going to be 9. As you can see, what I'm doing first is I'm looking at my denominator. I'm dividing my denominator by 2. I find the quotient and I compare the quotient to my numerator. If my numerator is greater than my quotient, I drop that fraction and I add 1 to my whole number. If my numerator is less than my quotient, I am going to just drop that fraction and my answer is just going to be the whole number. Let's go and move on to another example. I have 11 and 3/12. 11 and 3/12. First off, again, my first step is look at your denominator. My denominator is 12. After that, what is half of 12? If you don't know what the half of 12 is, remember you can just divide your denominator by 2. 2 divided by 12 equals 6. I have no remainder. And I am going to compare my quotient, 6, to my numerator. Which one is greater? 6 is greater. My quotient is greater. That means my fraction is less than 1/2. So all I'm going to do is drop that fraction, and my final answer is 11. Let's going to move on to our last example. I have one more. I have 8 and 4 over 9. 8 and 4 over 9. I look at my denominator first. My denominator is 9. What's half of 9? Half of 9, we can divide that by 2. 2 divided by 9 equals 4. 2 times 4 equals 8. Remainder 1. I'm going to add a decimal point. Annex is 0. How many times can 2 go into 10? That'll be 5 times. 2 times 5 equals 10. And remainder 0. So half of 9 is 4.5. So I have 4.5, and I'm comparing my quotient to my numerator. Is my numerator greater or smaller than my quotient? My numerator is smaller than my quotient. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to drop my fraction, and my final answer is going to be 8. Today's classwork is going to be page 281, and you are going to do all page 280, not page 281, you're going to do all page 283. Goodbye.